Hello and welcome to this session on modern Western philosophy. Today we will be discussing the German philosopher Leibniz and his doctrine of monads. Let's look at rationalism first. Rationalism is a 17th century philosophical position that asserts the role of reason as the main source as well as test of knowledge. Reason is taken into consideration for receiving and justifying knowledge. Here, the criterion of truth is not experience, but reason. So, rationalists believe that knowledge is innate. It relies on the idea that reality has a rational structure and in that all aspects of it can be grasped through mathematical and logical principles. So, it emphasizes the supremacy of reason over experience. In epistemology, rationalism is the view that regards reason as the chief source and test of knowledge, or any view appealing to reason as a source of knowledge or justification. More formally, rationalism is defined as a methodology or a theory in which the criterion of the truth is not sensory but intellectual and deductive. Rationalists believe that reality has an intrinsically logical structure. Because of this, rationalists argue that certain truths exist and that the intellect can directly grasp these truths. That is to say, rationalists assert that certain rational principles exist in logic, mathematics, ethics and metaphysics that are so fundamentally true that denying them causes one to fall into contradiction. Rationalists have such a high confidence in reason that empirical proof and physical evidence are unnecessary to ascertain truth. In other words, there are significant ways in which our concepts and knowledge are gained independently of sense experience. At its core, rationalism consists of three basic claims: the intuition-deduction thesis, the innate knowledge thesis, and the innate concept thesis. In addition, rationalists can choose to adopt the claims of indispensability of reason or the superiority of reason. It is said that Pythagoras was the first thinker in Western philosophy who stressed rationalist insight. The intensifying of rational insight above perception was prominent in Plato's philosophy also. René Descartes, the father of modern Western philosophy, gave reason a prominent role and it became a school, and besides him, Spinoza and Leibnitz are the major thinkers of rationalism. In its philosophical implications, rationalism as a position does not go well with empiricism. But it should be noted that in its broad sense, rationalism and empiricism cannot be considered mutually exclusive. In its strict sense, empiricism asserts that ideas are attained a posteriori, after experience. It means external senses or inner sensations are responsible for knowledge. In short, knowledge has its foundation in experience according to empiricism. But for rationalists, knowledge is gained a priori. Since the time of enlightenment, rationalism is usually associated with the introduction of mathematical methods into philosophy as seen in the works of Descartes, Leibniz and Spinoza. This is commonly called continental rationalism because it was predominant in the continental schools of Europe. The philosophers who held this view most clearly were Baruch Spinoza and Gottfried Leibniz, whose attempts to grapple with the epistemological and metaphysical problems raised by Descartes led to a development of the fundamental approach of rationalism. Both Spinoza and Leibniz asserted that, in principle, all knowledge, including scientific knowledge, could be gained through the use of reason alone, though they both observed that this was not possible in practice for human beings, except in specific areas such as mathematics. The three major thinkers of rationalism have different opinions about substance, and they gave rise to three different metaphysical schools regarding their views. They are monism, dualism, and pluralism. Spinoza believes that the basic substance of this universe is one, which is God, so he is the well-known monist. Cartesian dualism put forward the idea that the basic substances are dual, which are mind and matter. Leibniz rejects both these views and emphasized multiplicity of substances, which he called monads. Let us look into Leibniz's life now. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz was born in 1646 at Leipzig, Germany, where his father held a professor's chair. Having chosen law for his profession, he entered the university in 1661. he defended in 1663 for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy his dissertation De Principio Individui. Thereafter, he went to Jena, later to Altdorf, where he took the degree of Doctor of Laws. In the year 1672, he went to Paris and he died in 1716. He is one of the 17th century German rationalists who contributed to the realm of philosophy in general and Western philosophy in particular with his philosophical speculations. His contributions to the field of mathematics, physics, ethics, logic and theology are remarkable. He is considered as the polymath of the greatest genius that ever lived, second only to Aristotle. It is because of these contributions that Leibniz occupies a prominent place in the history of philosophy and also in the history of mathematics. Metaphysical speculations of Leibniz are largely characterized by optimism because of his conception that this world is the best possible one that God could have created. Leibniz is rightly regarded as one of the greatest advocates of 17th century rationalism along with Descartes and Spinoza. The principle of sufficient reason, the law of contradiction and the identity of indiscernibles are the three self-evident principles that make the metaphysical system of Leibniz extremely rich in its content. Apart from these, Leibniz incorporated predicate and subject theory of truth into his system. In its extreme sense, the universe includes God and other monads alone. In this extreme sense, all other notions like causation, space, time and matter are all illusions. Causation is explained in terms of the harmony which is being pre-established by God. Leibniz made several contributions to mathematics and his work on mathematics has been now developed and named topology. Yet another contribution of Leibniz was in the form of the invention of calculus. Bertrand Russell has stated that Leibniz made this invention independent of Sir Isaac Newton. Leibniz incorporated the ideas which he developed by taking cues from materialists, Aristotelians and Cartesians. His major works are Meditation on Knowledge, Truth and Ideas published in 1684, Discourse on Metaphysics 1686, Primary Truths 1689, New System 1695, Specimen Dynamicum 1695, On the Ultimate Origination of Things 1697, On Nature Itself 1698, New Essays on Human Understanding 1704, Theodicy 1710, Monadology 1714 and Principles of Nature and Grace 1714. Now let us look at his doctrine of monads. Like Descartes and Spinoza, Leibniz based his philosophy on the notion of substance, but he differed radically from them in the relation of mind and matter. And as regards the number of substances, Descartes allowed three substances: God, mind and matter. Spinoza admitted God alone, but Leibniz believes in an infinite number of substances which he called monads. According to Leibniz, reality is a unity or is constituted by unities. By unity, he means what is simple, indivisible and capable of development in spite of being partless and having a unification of experience. The unities of which bodies are constituted are also real, with only one difference, that they possess no consciousness. So, these unities and conscious soul unities are real unities which Leibniz calls monads. The monads, because they are partless, came into being as wholes and go out of existence as wholes. That is, there is no part by part construction or destruction. God creates them and God annihilates them. Otherwise, they are uncreatable and indestructible. As simple unities, they can receive no communication from anything outside. They are windowless and as a result, they become isolated. But that does not make them static or changeless. They are active. In fact, activity is their essential quality. They not only change, but develop due to inner necessity. This independence and development, according to their own inner force and principle, confer on monads substantiality and individuality. What is real is individual. A monad is uniquely describable. It is a center of force. Every monad represents the universe after its own fashion. Monads do not have parts, they are purely indivisible. Monads are self-contained. Each monad has the whole infinity of existence in it. Each monad is nothing but the whole universe itself. It is world itself potentially, in the sense that each monad contains the complete possibility of whatever happens to it. Monads mirror the world. Activities are reflected in monads. the degree of reflection depends on the nature of the monads. Monads are windowless. Leibniz held that no two monads can ever have any causal relation to each other, when it seems if they had, appearances are deceptive. This led to two difficulties, one in dynamics, where bodies seem to affect each other, especially in impact, and the other in relation to perception, which seems to be an effect of the perceived object upon the percipient. Leibniz held that every monad mirrors the universe, not because the universe affects it, but because God has given it a nature which spontaneously produces this result. There is a pre-established harmony between the changes in one monad and those in another, which produces the semblance of interaction. The concept of pre-established harmony was explained by Leibniz with the example of two clocks which strike at the same moment because each keeps perfect time. Leibniz has an infinite number of clocks, all arranged by the Creator to strike at the same instant, not because they affect each other, but because each is a perfectly accurate mechanism. To those who thought pre-established harmony odd, Leibniz pointed out what admirable evidence is afforded of the existence of God by this theory. Leibniz explained that the world is composed of monads which are infinitely simple substances. These monads are the fundamental parts that constitute reality. Substances are true unities and it cannot have aggregates. Monads are neither created nor destroyed. Creation always presupposes a collection of parts. Thus, it is being maintained by Leibniz that monads are not destructible since there are no parts to be broken down. In the view of Leibniz, extension cannot be real. Extension presupposes force, which seems to be more ultimate. Extension can be explained in terms of impenetrability or resistance, but resistance means some force. Leibniz rejects matter and retains the mind of Descartes, but the Cartesian notion of mind has to be further modified in order that it may serve to explain the variety of experiences. Leibniz believes in the principle of individuality. The reality cannot be one, but many, though each is eternal and real. The real whole can be explained in terms of real parts. The monads are infinite and eternal. It can be destroyed only by miracle on the part of God. No monad has any part and therefore truly indivisible. It is self-contained and exclusive of everything else. Being a real unit, each monad contains the whole infinity of existence. Each monad is a world in miniature, a macrocosm in a microcosm. It contains within itself the possibility of everything which happens to it. Each monad is a world apart, all by itself. It has no windows through which anything might come in or go out. Space, as it appears to the senses, as it is assumed in physics, is not real, but it has a real counterpart, namely the arrangement of monads in a three-dimensional order according to the point of view from which they mirror the world. Each monad sees the world in a certain perspective peculiar to itself. In this sense, we can speak somewhat loosely of the monad as having a spatial position. In this way of speaking, we can assume that there is no such thing as vacuum. Every possible point filled by one actual monad and by only one. No two monads are exactly alike. This is his principle of the identity of the indiscernibles. It is being speculated by Leibniz that the infinite number of monads are qualitatively unlike. We can never find out two monads which are alike. Monads place themselves in a hierarchical order of existence. Each monad inevitably leads to others, and there is no possibility of abrupt change in the series of monads. The reason behind this particular thought is that the variety of experience can only be explained with the help of absolute continuity existing between monads. Monads, being spiritual, have two important characteristics: perception and appetition. It is with the perception that monads mirror the whole infinity of existence. If a monad is more developed, then it will be having relatively clear perception. The less developed monad can have only a confused perception. Different degrees of perception may be present in the same monad according to its stage of development. It is by virtue of the characteristic of appetition that each monad, which is a force, tends to become the whole. Appetition makes a monad pass from vague to clear perception. There is a hierarchy among monads in which some are superior to others in the clearness and distinctness with which they mirror the universe. Monads found in a continuous series, one imperceptibly passing into the other. Leibnitz is of the opinion that lowest monads are bare monads and they have the most obscure perception. They are mere centers of force. Bare monads express themselves in the form of mere mechanical motion. Bare monads are in deep sleep. Conscious monads have memory. Conscious monads are nothing but souls. Highest monads are termed spirits, which have reason as well as universal knowledge. While in lower monads, force is in the mechanical motion, appetition is in the form of instincts in animals. Force is expressed in the form of self-conscious desire and will in the spirits. The specialty lies in the series of monads is that higher monads includes the lower ones. Now let us look at the problem of mind-body relation. In order to explain the interrelated nature of things, Leibniz introduced the doctrine of pre-established harmony. Every monad is independent of other monads, but they are synchronized by God. It does mean that a monad affects another. He opined that each monad expresses or potentially contains the entire universe. They are windowless in the sense that no causal influence can be supplied or received by a monad. Monad are eternal and thus cannot be either created or destroyed. Leibniz is of the opinion that the composite things are the combination of infinite number of monads which are either inanimate or animate. Thus, Leibniz opined that the harmony which exists between the monads is pre-established by God. The monads have been arranged by God in a particular way so that the grand plan in his mind can be fulfilled. In a way, monads are independent and they work based on the inner urge. But this inner urge and plan of monads are directed to the realization of that plan in the mind of God. Harmony is there in the working of monads because each monad intends to make the realization of the same final end in the mind of God. Descartes put forth a dualism that gave the substance of mind at least more control than the substance of body ever could give the mind, but not without complication. Leibniz, who technically believes in only one substance, think of God as the supreme monad, but speaks of infinitely many ones, certainly sees a difference between body and soul as well. But he is careful to avoid the pitfalls that Cartesian dualism can bring by saying that only soul is actually the real substance of the two, and that the body is more of an assemblage that does not constitute substantial unity, whether the arrangement of its parts be regular or irregular. And so, it is truly only soul which is indivisible and indestructible and which carries with it a general expression of the whole universe, that is, ultimate really responsible for, say, the sensation of pain the soul feels after, say, being pricked. In the case of mind-body problem, Leibniz disagrees with interaction, occasionalism and parallelism. His famous analogy of two clocks says that they neither mutually influence each other nor do they act under somebody's constant supervision. Again, they run accurately, but their parallel course is not without reason. A harmony has been pre-established between them. This can be occurring in one of three ways. A. Natural influence, like pendulum clocks, the way of influence. B. Having someone watch over them constantly to avoid any lack of harmony, the way of assistance. C. Having them programmed perfectly so that they will always be in agreement, the way of pre-established harmony. A. Establishing a causal link, such as a connection between the pendulums of these clocks. B. Asking a person to constantly synchronize the two clocks, and C. Designing and constructing these clocks so perfectly that they will remain perfectly synchronized without any causal links or adjustments. Leibniz contends option C is superior to the other two options, and it is in this way that God ensures that the states of my mind correspond to the states of my body, or in fact, that the perceptions of any created substance harmonize with the perceptions of any other. The world is arranged and designed so perfectly that events in one substance correspond to events in another substance, even though they do not causally interact, and even though God does not intervene to adjust one to the other. Because of His infinite wisdom and foreknowledge, God was able to pre-establish this mutual correspondence or harmony when He created the world, analogously to the way a skilled clockmaker can construct two clocks that perfectly correspond to one another for a period of time. Leibnitz puts forward four arguments for the existence of God. They are 1. The ontological argument, 2. The cosmological argument, 3. The argument from eternal truth, and 4. The argument from the pre-established harmony. The ontological argument depends upon the distinction between existence and essence. In the case of any finite substance, its essence does not imply its existence. But in the case of God, defined as the most perfect being that is the subject of all perfections, from all finite existence, there can be conceived a subject of all perfections or most perfect being, that is God. The cosmological argument is more plausible than the ontological argument. It points out that everything finite has a cause, which in turn had a cause, and so on. There is therefore an uncaused cause of everything, and this is obviously God. The argument eternal truth states that the truths are part of the contents of minds, and that an eternal truth must be the part of the content of an eternal mind. Therefore, eternal truths must, in some sense, exist, and they can only exist as thoughts in the minds of God. The pre-established harmony is about windowless monad. Leibniz states that since all the clocks keep time with each other without any causal interaction, there must have been a single outside cause that regulated all of them. This single outside cause is God. To summarize, Leibniz is one of the prominent contributors of Western philosophy as well as rationalism, and his theory of monads, monadology, has a major role in Western metaphysics. According to him, monads are the basic substance of this universe. They are infinite, eternal, and spiritual atoms by which this world is made of. In order to explain substance, Leibniz used the idea of complete concepts. Leibniz maintained that the complete concepts are the concepts of really existing things which can be otherwise termed substance. A substance is nothing but a real substance which is expressed in thought. In Leibniz's conception, monad is that existing reality that the complete concept indicates. A complete concept includes all the predicates, including the future ones in it, even in its potential form. Thus, monad should potentially contain all those properties that will be exhibited in the future. Now, to further expand your knowledge and make you a little more aware of this theory, let us look at some assignments. First of all, discuss the features of rationalism. Second, explain the pluralistic aspects involved in the doctrine of monads. Explain this type of substances, monads, in Leibniz's philosophy, and explain how different the conception of substance developed by Leibniz is from that of Cartesians. Explain the theory of monads as an attempt to resolve the problem of substance. For further references and to expand your knowledge further, these are some of the books that you can refer. A Critical History of Western Philosophy by Y. Massey, published by Motilal Banarsidass, 1999. A History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, Simon & Schuster, published in 1967. A History of Philosophy by Frank Tilly, Central Publishing House, 1989. Modern Philosophy by Albert Schweigler, K.P. Bagchi & Co., 1982. You can also refer to these websites www.iep.edu/leib-ove/ www.uni-hanover.de/en/ or www.mindmeister.com. Thank you for watching this session. See you next time. Until then, bye.